Imagine opening your eyes one morning only to realize that the people around you have stopped asking questions. The streets are busy, the screens are glowing, voices are louder than ever, yet something is missing. The human mind, once sharp enough to challenge kings and question the universe itself, has softened into quiet compliance. And what happens to a world where curiosity dies? What becomes of a society where reasoning is no longer practiced, and reflection is replaced with reactions? In this video, we will confront an unsettling reality, the slow disappearance of critical thinking, and we will uncover the rise of something far more dangerous, what many thinkers now describe as collective ignorance, a condition where entire groups of people blindly repeat shallow ideas, accept half-truths, and surrender their independence of thought without ever noticing. Stay until the end, because the conclusion of this journey is not only urgent. It could determine whether we reclaim our ability to think, or surrender it completely to a system designed to keep us distracted, entertained, and numb. But before we dive in, pause for a moment. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because what you are about to hear may disturb you. It may shake the way you see the world. And if it does, then you will know this message has done its job. Let us begin with a difficult truth. Thinking is not easy. And today, it is not even encouraged. Modern life does not reward patience, contemplation, or wisdom. It rewards speed, emotion, and conformity. And this design is no accident. From social media algorithms that only show you what you already agree with, to school systems that reward memorization over imagination, our world is quietly training us not to think. Decades ago, the linguist and philosopher Noam Chomsky warned us about this exact danger. He described it as the manufacturing of consent. In simple terms, when people are conditioned to accept information without questioning it, they become easier to control, easier to persuade, and easier to deceive. Critical thinking, once the crown jewel of human progress, has now become an inconvenience. It interrupts outrage culture. It slows down the flood of online debates. It questions authority. And in a world obsessed with being right, even asking, "But is this really true?" is treated as a threat. So how did we reach this point? The answer lies in the very environment we now live in. One of the greatest drivers of this decline is information overload. Neuroscientist Daniel Kahneman revealed that the average person today processes more than 5 times the amount of information each day compared to just a few decades ago. Think about that. From the moment you wake up, your mind is bombarded with alerts, news flashes, messages, advertisements, endless updates. But here is the problem: the human brain was never designed for this kind of constant assault. When overwhelmed, the brain takes shortcuts. It leans on mental habits, on biases, and on the safety of the crowd. Instead of weighing ideas carefully, it looks for signals. What are my peers saying? What are the headlines suggesting? What do the authorities claim? This is what psychologists call social proof. And while it once served as a survival mechanism, it has now become one of the easiest tools of manipulation. Think of the last time you saw a post with hundreds of thousands of likes. Without even meaning to, your mind assumed, this must be important, this must be true. But that was not reason, that was conditioning. And it is exactly why shallow thinking spreads so quickly. Not because people are unintelligent, but because they are being trained to follow signals instead of engaging their own reason. Another factor is just as alarming: the collapse of deep reading. Neuroscientist Marianne Wolf has shown how the digital age is rewiring the brain itself. We skim, we scroll, we jump between tabs. We chase headlines, but lose the ability to sit with long texts, to wrestle with ideas, to reflect. And here is the catch. Critical thinking demands sustained focus. You cannot analyze, you cannot reflect. You cannot see the deeper truth if your attention is fractured every 10 seconds. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you read an entire article without glancing at your phone? When was the last time you paused after hearing something provocative? Not to react, not to argue, but simply to think. These small habits, once natural, are vanishing, and with them, the muscle of critical thought is shrinking. The late Carl Jung warned of this very danger. We now live in a society utterly dependent on science and technology, while at the same time very few understand either. And his warning was not only about ignorance. It was about the erosion of our ability to reason about the systems we depend on every single day. In a culture full of hot takes, outrage, and superficial debate, the quiet act of thinking clearly has become an act of rebellion. But the challenge is not only technological, it is also deeply emotional. Because critical thinking is uncomfortable, it demands that we face our own ignorance. It challenges our ego, and it threatens the identity we cling to. It pushes us into cognitive dissonance, that unsettling state when our beliefs collide with new evidence. And in a culture that worships certainty, confidence, and quick answers, uncertainty is seen as weakness. So instead of thinking, we defend. We retreat into our tribes. We cling to slogans. We avoid the hard work of questioning. This pattern begins early. Let us look at the education system. John Taylor Gatto, an award-winning teacher who became a fierce critic of traditional schooling, once revealed the hidden purpose of modern education. He argued that schools were not designed to produce independent thinkers, but obedient workers. Instead of teaching children how to think, schools taught them what to think. Exams rewarded memorization, not imagination. Originality was treated as disruption. Curiosity was quietly punished. The message was clear: stay in line, obey the rules, repeat the answers. And this conditioning does not end with childhood. It follows us into adult life. In the workplace, questioning the system can cost you your career. In media, disagreeing with the mainstream narrative can get you silenced. Even in friendships, simply holding an unpopular opinion risks rejection. So, what do most people do? They stay quiet. They nod along. They suppress their doubts. But silence, when repeated long enough, turns into complicity. The psychologist Erich Fromm warned about this in his book Escape from Freedom. He explained that many people do not actually want freedom of thought. Why? Because freedom brings responsibility, and responsibility is frightening. To think for yourself means you can no longer blame society for your ignorance. You can no longer hide in the safety of the crowd. You must face the uncertainty of reality on your own. And for many, that price is simply too high. So they choose comfort. They choose distraction. They choose the illusion of simplicity. And in doing so, they make themselves far easier to control. Nowhere is this conditioning more visible than on social media. What was once a tool for connection has mutated into a machine of distraction, outrage, and control. Every platform is designed with one purpose: keep you scrolling. And how do they do that? Not by feeding you truth, but by feeding you what will keep you emotionally hooked. The algorithm does not care about reality. It cares about reaction, and reaction is fastest when you are angry, fearful, or amused. So, you are pushed toward content that confirms your beliefs. You are rewarded for instant responses. You are encouraged to argue, to perform, to react, but almost never to reflect. The result: a society addicted to noise. Outrage spreads faster than reason. Certainty drowns out humility, and the calm voice of critical thought is buried beneath a storm of emotional reactions. The philosopher Marshall McLuhan saw this coming more than half a century ago. He warned that the medium is the message, meaning The very way information is delivered shapes the way we think. And today's mediums, fast feeds, flashing headlines, endless notifications, are designed to make us think shallowly, not deeply. They reward speed, not patience. They reward outrage, not nuance. They reward confidence, not wisdom. Even truth itself has been warped. In the age of misinformation, what matters is not what is true, but what is viral. People no longer ask, is this supported by evidence? They ask, how many people agree with it? This is the tyranny of the majority, not political, but cognitive. Ideas rise or fall not by logic, but by popularity. So where do we go from here? It begins with one simple but dangerous act, asking better questions. Not the shallow questions of debate, but the deeper ones. Who benefits when I believe this? What assumptions hide beneath my certainty? Am I seeking understanding or just validation? These are not comfortable questions, but they are necessary, because the cure for collective ignorance is not more information, it is courage. The courage to admit when you are wrong. The courage to explore what you do not know. The courage to think, even when it costs you comfort, status, or approval. But to truly understand why critical thinking is so rare, we must look deeper into the human mind itself. Because the truth is, our brains were not built for truth. They were built for survival. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman explained this brilliantly in Thinking, Fast and Slow. He showed that the mind has two systems. System 1, fast, automatic, emotional. It reacts instantly. It jumps to conclusions. It sees patterns even when none exist. It kept our ancestors alive when they heard a rustle in the bushes. Better to assume danger and run. System 2, slow, deliberate, rational. It analyzes, it questions, it weighs evidence. It is powerful, but it is also lazy. It only activates when forced. And here lies the problem. In a world that rewards speed, distraction, and instant reaction, System 2 rarely wakes up. Most people live on autopilot, trusting instincts, following emotions, clinging to biases. These biases shape everything. Confirmation bias makes us seek evidence that supports what we already believe. Authority bias makes us trust someone just because they sound confident. Groupthink makes us surrender our judgment just to belong. These are not accidents. They are features of the human mind, and those who understand them. Politicians, advertisers, media companies use them against us every single day. Edward Bernays, often called the father of propaganda, revealed this openly. He said that the masses are governed by invisible strings pulled by those who understand psychology. He called it the engineering of consent. And that is exactly what we see now. Your fears are engineered. Your desires are manufactured. Your beliefs are nudged, shaped, and reinforced by forces you rarely notice. Think about it, how many of your opinions are truly yours? How many are simply the result of repetition, exposure, and subtle influence? This is why Socrates declared that the unexamined life is not worth living. Because without examination, you are not truly living your life. You are living the life designed for you by others. Critical thinking, then, is not just a skill. It is an act of rebellion. It is the refusal to let your mind be colonized by outside forces. And yet, the irony is this: the very moment you begin to think independently, you will face resistance from society, from friends, even from yourself. Because thinking clearly is not easy. It is heavy. It is slow. It strips away the comforting illusions that most people rely on. And yet, it is the only path to freedom. Society has always feared the thinker, not the dreamer, not the worker, not the follower, but the one who dares to question the script. History makes this painfully clear. Every age has punished its truth tellers. Socrates was forced to drink poison for corrupting the youth. Galileo was silenced for saying the earth was not the center of the universe. Giordano Bruno was burned alive for refusing to abandon his vision of infinite worlds. And though the punishments today may be less violent, the pattern remains. Speak against the mainstream and you risk being mocked, censored, or exiled. Not by swords and flames, but by ridicule, algorithms, and cancellation, because independent thought is dangerous to any system of control. If too many people start questioning, the illusions collapse, and power depends on illusions. So society trains us early: do not stand out, blend in. Follow the script. Repeat what is safe. Even families often unknowingly enforce this. Children who ask too many questions are told to stop talking back. Students who challenge the teacher are labeled troublemakers. Workers who question orders are branded difficult. And slowly, the fire of inquiry dims, not because truth was disproven, but because it was too costly to pursue. This is why so many thinkers throughout history spoke of loneliness. Nietzsche described it as walking along cliffs, far above the crowd. Carl Jung spoke of the loneliness of the seeker, the one who follows inner truth even when it leads away from the tribe. Even Jesus, in his time, was rejected not because people did not hear him, but because his words threatened the comfort of their illusions. And here lies the paradox. The very act of thinking for yourself can make you feel isolated, but that isolation is the proof of your independence. Because the crowd does not punish you for being wrong. It punishes you for being different. It punishes you for refusing the comfort of conformity. So, the question becomes, are you willing to pay that price? Are you willing to endure solitude in exchange for clarity? Are you willing to lose the approval of the crowd in order to keep the integrity of your own mind? Few are, but those few shape the course of history. And yet, despite the resistance, despite the punishment, the world has always been moved forward by the very people who refused to conform. It was thinkers who shattered the chains of old beliefs. It was seekers who lit torches in the darkness. It was rebels of the mind who bent the arc of history toward new horizons. Think of Martin Luther nailing his theses to the church door. Think of Galileo whispering, and yet it moves. Think of Charles Darwin trembling as he unveiled a theory that would shake the foundation of human identity. These were not comfortable men. They were not applauded in their lifetimes. They were ridiculed, attacked, dismissed. And yet, their courage to think became the seed of revolutions that outlived them all. Every breakthrough in science, philosophy, and human rights began the same way, with one person asking a forbidden question, with one mind refusing to accept the given script. This is why George Bernard Shaw said, "Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything." But here is the secret most never understand. These great thinkers were not extraordinary by birth. They were ordinary people who chose to exercise a muscle that most of us neglect, the muscle of independent thought. And like any muscle, the more it is used, the stronger it grows. Critical thinking is not reserved for geniuses in ivory towers. It belongs to anyone willing to slow down, to question, to reflect, to resist the easy answer. That means it belongs to you. The question is not whether you can think for yourself. The question is whether you will, because the temptation of comfort will always whisper, "Stay with the crowd. Do not question. Do not stand out." But history remembers the ones who said no to that voice. History remembers the ones who bore the weight of solitude in order to carry truth into the future. And maybe, just maybe, the next one could be you. But the question remains, how do we practice critical thinking in a world designed to suppress it? How do we protect our minds when distraction and manipulation surround us on every side? The answer is not found in grand theories. It begins with small daily habits. First, learn to pause. Most mistakes in thinking happen because we rush. A headline flashes, a friend makes a claim, a video stirs your emotion, and instantly System 1 reacts. Pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this fact or is it feeling? That simple pause creates space for clarity. Second, ask better questions. Instead of, is this true? Ask, how do I know it is true? Instead of, who is right? Ask, what evidence supports each side? Instead of, what should I think? Ask, who benefits if I think this way? Third, embrace discomfort. Critical thinking is not meant to make you feel safe. It is meant to reveal reality, even when reality is unpleasant. So when you feel resistance, when a truth stings, do not run. Lean in. The discomfort is a sign that your mind is stretching. Fourth, read beyond your bubble. Expose yourself to books, ideas, and perspectives that challenge you. If you only consume what agrees with you, your mind atrophies. If you engage with the unfamiliar, your mind sharpens. Fifth, write. Because thinking that stays in the head remains vague. But once you put it into words, on paper, in a journal, in a conversation, it becomes precise. Writing is thinking made visible. And finally, seek dialogue, not debate. Debate is about winning. Dialogue is about understanding. The true thinker is not afraid of being proven wrong, because being corrected brings them closer to truth. These habits are not glamorous. They do not make headlines, but practiced over time, they transform the mind into something society fears most, a mind that cannot be manipulated. Because a mind trained to pause, to question, to endure discomfort, to learn, and to seek truth, that mind is free. And a free mind, multiplied across thousands, becomes unstoppable. But there is a deeper layer to all of this. Critical thinking is not only intellectual, it is also profoundly spiritual, because to think clearly is to live truthfully, and to live truthfully is to honor the soul. When you free your mind from illusions, you do more than sharpen logic. You cleanse your inner world of falsehood. You remove the noise, the lies, the borrowed beliefs, and what remains is something pure clarity. The Stoic philosophers knew this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "If someone can show me I am mistaken, I will gladly change, for it is truth I seek, and no one was ever harmed by truth." This is the essence of wisdom, not clinging to ego, not defending identity at all costs, but humbly aligning the mind with reality, whatever it may be. And in this alignment, a strange kind of peace arises, because confusion breeds anxiety, but truth, even when painful, brings stillness. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Critical thinking is one path toward that awakening. It turns the unconscious into the examined. It transforms blind fate into conscious choice. But here is the paradox. The freer your mind becomes, the lonelier the path may feel. You will see illusions that others cling to. You will hear the chains in their words, the fear in their beliefs. And you will feel the weight of walking against the current. Yet you will also feel something else, a profound inner freedom, the kind of freedom that no government, no crowd, no ideology can give or take away, because true freedom is not the absence of chains on the body. It is the absence of chains on the mind. And once you taste that freedom, once you learn to think beyond conditioning, beyond illusion, beyond fear, you can never return to blindness. The journey of thought becomes the journey of the soul. So, we arrive at the final question. Why does all this matter now, more than ever? Because we live in an age where information is infinite, but wisdom is rare, where knowledge is abundant, but clarity is scarce. Never have so many voices competed for your attention. Never have so many illusions been so carefully engineered. And never has the courage to think for yourself been so urgently needed. This is not simply about intelligence. It is about survival, of your freedom, of your dignity, of your humanity. Because a society that does not think collapses into manipulation. A generation that does not question becomes a tool in the hands of power. And an individual who does not examine his own beliefs becomes a prisoner inside his own mind. But a single thinker can ignite change. One question can expose a lie. One act of courage can break a chain. One awakened mind can inspire 1,000 more. That is why every empire fears the philosopher. That is why every tyrant fears the poet. That is why every manipulator fears the quiet man or woman who refuses to nod along. And maybe that is you. Not because you are louder, or stronger, or wealthier than others, but because you dare to see. You dare to question. You dare to walk a different path. So do not wait for permission. Do not wait for the crowd. Do not wait for certainty. Begin where you are. Question what you are told. Seek truth over comfort. Choose freedom over illusion. Because in the end, the true revolution is not out there. It begins within. And once a mind is free, the world around it can never remain the same.